Welcome to NeuroNoodle's Neurofeedback and Neuropsychology podcast featuring tech legend Jay Gunkelman. He's the man who has read well over 500,000 brain scans, and Dr. Mari Swingle, author of iMinds. Our goal is to provide information and promote options for better mental health. The NeuroNoodle podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you, like our silver supporter, Mind Media. Get the latest EEG and neurofeedback technology from mindmedia.com. Their semi-dry sensor cap is a wonder to see, and their EEG amplifiers have been trusted in the field for decades. Their neurofeedback and QEEG courses will get you up to speed in no time. Visit mindmedia.com now.
So should we good cop, bad cop him, or what?
Oh no!
It's all good cop with John.
Oh yeah, he's a good guy. There's no need to poke at him.
I hear he's a good guy.
Are you poking? Are you poking at me before I got here?
We were just kidding around. Okay, here we're gonna let him in. Okay, should we good cop, bad cop him, or how should we handle this?
I'm in already, guys. Oh,
you're looking good.
Well, thank you, good sir. I keep working on my beard. Aspiration.
Beard's a little short, but other than that,
that's what I was going to say. It's aspirational. I appreciate the love.
John, please help me with your last name.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's always a stumbler. Mekrut. It's really simple.
Mekrut, and we have Dr. Mari with us. John,
and the program is on pronunciation skills.
Well, I'm from Chicago, inner city, and I got this dialect. I've had it for 2-3 decades, and it's hard to pick up.
Yeah, I think I saw you on Saturday Night Live with the Chicago Bears bits. Yeah, exactly. I still don't understand a hot dog with tomatoes on it. That escapes me.
As long as you don't put ketchup on it, it's okay.
I'm with you.
You'll get beat up.
No ketchup, but I do like tomatoes. Yep.
Yeah. See, it's like a thing. I'm from New York. It's sauerkraut and mustard. That's it.
That's good too.
Yeah,
one little variation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm from Fargo. If you got food, you ate it.
Yeah, moose.
Yeah, moose. Oh my God. Well, it's nice to meet you guys. Jay, you I know. Pete, I've seen you obviously. Mari, sorry. Yeah. You I don't know. So it's a pleasure to meet you.
Same here.
Yeah.
Well, we've asked Dr. Mari to hop on. She has that awesome book, iMinds, and she's a big internet addiction person. And we've done a lot of shows together, and she's a pip, John, a real pip.
I love it.
And anytime she has a space open for us, we're going to please welcome her on the show to keep Jay and I in line.
Exactly. I'm with you. Well, I'm hoping for, are we recording already? Yeah. All right. You'll edit out whatever the hell you don't want. Whatever the heck you don't want in the podcast. I'll try to keep my mouth in control. I would love to chat with all of you about, my goal in coming on here was talk about integrative practices, the sort of the visibility that I perceive. I was just listening to your podcast with Andrew Hill. And I think, Jay, you said something about the penetration that we all perceive as practitioners, the penetration of the concept of neurofeedback culturally. I've been doing this, 15, 16, 17 years, something like that. And I remember when I first started, it was like, neurofeedback, what is that? At least now people are calling up saying, I know about it. I heard about it. A friend of mine did it, whatever. They've got some frame of reference, if not specific, at least vague. I've literally had a guy call me and ask me what equipment I used. So there are people out there who are highly informed about the machinery and the techniques that are being used out there in the world. But I think we're kind of at an inflection point. I'm hoping we're at an inflection point where people are starting to understand the integrative nature of their health and where and how neurotechnologies can fit into that platform. I have a love-hate relationship with the word biohacking. There's a subtle implication in it that there's some shortcut to all of this, when I think all of us in the practice of changing brain behaviors understand there are no shortcuts. Well, maybe electroconvulsive therapy, but that's for a different day. But in traditional form, there really is no shortcut to any of this. It's a full frontal attack. You want to be healthy, it's a full frontal attack on every aspect of your life, from your psychospiritual world to your below the neck world and its connection to your above the neck world. I'm using your metaphor from a couple of days ago, Pete, because I really like the above the neck, below the neck thing. And it is all of a whole. Descartes was wrong in that regard. Yeah, it is an interconnected system. And my affection for functional medicine, let's just say it in the largest sense, comes from, I think, their deep core belief that there's a root cause for everything. And I think our Western cultural approach, be it through allopathic medicine or who knows where it derived from, probably historically from shamans and witches and etc., that there is some top-down authority that's going to give us the answer to our ills. When it's in here. We know best, all of us know best what's best for us, and we know what's going to fit in and how things should work. And we get lulled into this, well, here, I'll go to this doctor, I'll get diagnosed with this thing, and you're going to get a pill, and the symptoms are going to just disappear magically, and you're going to be great. Well, we all know that's nonsense, because 30 years later, you're back in our office going, why can't I get off my benzodiazepines? So if we can culturally approach it from a self-empowerment perspective, I think our job now as neurofeedback providers writ large is to help the culture take a shift. It is already happening. It's not going to be us necessarily. Everybody's nodding here. It's not going to be just us. The functional medicine community is well aware of this thought process. And that's what attracted me to them, because they speak in a language that's not disempowering, I guess, is probably the flip side of saying it that way. I'm the doctor, I know best, do this. Maybe not. If I've got a broken leg, yes, please set my, give me a cast, et cetera. If I've got, a tumor, please perform surgery and remove the tumor. But health is so much bigger than that. And I think that's our job as neurofeedback providers, is to start to make this bridge. I can go into how we did it in our clinic, or how we did it, how we're doing it. It's a multi-year, probably multi-decade process. I hope to live to see the end of it. But I see that there is a shift happening culturally. I think more people who come to see me are either have a functional doctor, they know what that is, they've been to one, they've got a regimen, they've got some knowledge base about how their diet affects their mood, they've got some sensibility about it. May not be perfectly formed yet, but at least they have the beginnings of that appreciation. The days of, and I'll share my own personal pain in this because I thought I was that guy, of being an electrician to fix your brain. It's like, that's how I thought I was. I thought I was a technician. I thought I was the guy who was going to tweak all the little circuit, then everything was going to go on about your life, completely disregarding the underlying reality of, well, how do you sleep? What's your life like? Are you in an abusive relationship? Is your boss an idiot? What's your connection to your community? Do you go out in nature at all? What do you eat? All the things that make us a full human being. Are if they're unattended, I can play with your brainwaves probably till the end of time, and it's not going to give you what you're looking for. Our skill set is not magical. It is, but it's not. You know what I'm saying? It's not magic in that sense of it's the fix. Neurofeedback isn't the fix. It's one of the things you need to be doing. Those are the clients that I can immediately tell. We have the conversation. Yeah, I'm looking for you to fix me up. Okay, this is going to be a tough road. And I may not take them on as a client because they're not at that point yet where they understand what it is I do in our clinic. And I'm hopefully many other clinics do as well. But how to apply the holistic frame of how are you going to be the best version of yourself?
You mean optimum performance isn't just the absence of pathology?
Yeah. There you go. There you go.
And, just, piggybacking what you were saying about, what I'd like to say is going to the right body part at this point, instead of going to a pill. Yeah, there's something in your brain and we want to help you with. But same thing, if you break your leg, you have to set the thing before you give a pill. Okay. But if you set the thing and give a pill, is that enough? So I could, if we're going to play with metaphors, is this a form of physiotherapy for the brain? Right.
Yeah.
How do you realize something isn't working quite well and then coming at it from multiple angles? But same thing, what you're saying, the one client that is typically the most difficult is a parent that comes in and just says, fix my kid, and then goes for a latte.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Yep. We all in clinic work have seen it repetitive times.
Yeah.
And we try in our clinic, we try to engage the parents using that as a for instance, we have a functional medicine health coach, comes as part of our program. Mm-hmm. And some people avail themselves, religiously with it, and some not so much. Everybody's human. With the kids, we'll dump that relationship off on the parents, because I think you and I both know it's a lot of times it's the parents who should be sitting in the chair.
You know what my most valuable piece of equipment is in my office?
Your brain. That's the easy call.
How about the second one?
The most important piece of equipment in your office.
Not my brain, and it's not the computer that I do the interface.
No, of course not. I was going to say your mouth, your ability to communicate with your clients.
It's a couch. It's a three-person couch. Yeah. So that, essentially you frequently, or I frequently invite the parent in. So they're a part of things, and you integrate the parent. Sometimes they're just sitting there reading. But when there's some kind of a learning opportunity for a parent, or something is going on, I can just immediately turn to the parent and demonstrate, or have the child repeat something or point something out, as opposed to going out into the waiting room and doing the report to the parent. But you probably also, John, you might even want to speak to is when is a parent appropriate in the treatment room versus when it doesn't work.
Well, you've got me redesigning my office now, Mari, so I don't have a couch in my treatment bays. They're too small. But that's a really interesting idea. I frankly hadn't thought of that. I'm not a psychotherapist, so understand that ours is completely just technically oriented. So there it isn't a therapeutic relationship that I'm having with an adult or a child, for that matter. But you got me thinking, that's not a bad idea. Bring the parent into the treatment room so they can say, well, what are they going to do while the kids got the headphones on and watching, Harry Potter? I'm not sure what the parent's going to do, but all right. From an observational, to have them witness, the reality of what doing neurofeedback is actually like could be very useful, because you're right. It's a disconnected, they drop their kid off, and you're right. They go for a latte. They go to, oddly, we encourage them sometimes to do it. They take their Ralph's run or their Costco run while they're leaving their kid with us. I like this idea. I'm going to steal that.
Of the famous people,
freely.
Of the famous people in our field, one of the famous folks who's perhaps, because she's passed a while ago now, is being slowly kind of forgotten for her contribution. But Judith Lubar brought the idea that if you've got a kid in therapy, get the family in therapy. Yeah. The kid didn't fall far from the tree, as an apple, and you've got to assume that whatever is going on with the kid has some impact on the family, and that the interaction with the family ends up being a part of how you're going to have to get this kid well.
Yeah.
And she emphasized that in a field that was more like what you said, like electronic technicians making tweaks. And she focused, you step back and focus, said, there's a family action going on here that we really have to focus on.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up, Jay. I think that's a key. Some of our foremothers and forefathers, the groundbreaking integration work that they were doing with the family, but sometimes I think the key is the family doesn't even know you're doing it, and there's a little bit of a magic in there.
And our field does have a little bias towards the males in the field when they talk about the field. Mm-hmm. And we also are a little shy on pigment. Our field is, on screen even, I'm not claiming to be part Native American. I'm not, I don't have anything other than some weird German in me, and German mixed with German, what a mistake, so, but our field needs to look to the richness of Barbara Brown and, Elmer and Alyce green, not just Elmer green, and, Judith Lubar and
Susan Othmer. John was trained by
exactly. There is a whole list of famous people who end up kind of being on a separate list, and although yes, Berbaumer and Lubar and Sturman and and Camilla are kind of major founding F1 generation. Yeah. You want to think in terms of kind of the genetic, passing on of the knowledge here. They're an F1 generation. There's a bunch of F2. We're getting into the era where another crop of young, folks are coming up and forming the F3 next generation of leaders, and it's exciting to see. And internationally, it's not quite as ethnocentric or male-centric. Mm-hmm. The Italian and Spanish society, they have their own neurofeedback, biofeedback societies, and they're, I've lectured to them, and those groups are, quite solidly being run and administered by the women. So we can't be quite so buried in the centric perception here.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would guess, and I don't know if anybody's ever done a study on this or broken it down. I would suspect that most people doing neurofeedback clinic work are female.
No. Well, I mean, I guess it's passage of time as well. I think most people know I'm second gen, but when I started to attend all of the meetings, there were very, very few females. And when there were females, they were paired, meaning they tended to be spouses. So the Lubars, obviously, the Thompsons, the Othmers. I'm in a father-daughter pairing. This is just a huge cultural bias. I'm really happy. I don't mind disclosing my age. I'm in my 50s, and it's time to stop getting out of the shadows. That cultural bias. But Jay, piggybacking what you were saying at BFE this year, I was overjoyed in Italy to see really sharp-minded, I'm going to be ageist now, young females. They weren't young, they were just younger than me. But it was just beautiful to see that coming up and picking up. But the one thing, again, Jay, that we're missing, I'm big-haired, but I don't have that tight curl most people of African descent. But that's a major flaw in terms of our equipment. So we don't have a huge Black population up here in Vancouver, Canada, but we certainly have a significant one. And I would say that's probably about 5% of our practice. And we've developed very special techniques to be able to part extremely springy hair to be able to do our work. And there's something wrong that we need a special technique. So I have a call out there to anybody making equipment for it to work on, all of us, shall we say. And the fact that we had a problem with just my big curly hair. Right.
Yeah, there was a series of a string of posts on the Neurofield list about a woman who had a full weave. Yes, from the front of her scalp all the way down to the back of her head. full head, just strips upon. I don't know enough about hair weaving to comment, but it was evidently strips all the way down. They could not figure out a way to get the sensors under, around, through. Nightmare. You got a way?
Because I figured a few things out, but I mean, it takes twice as long, right?
Yeah.
It takes now with two lovely balding men.
I know. So it's like
as people of color are entering our field, some of them enter into the traditional medical EEG field. And the medical EEG field has the same problem with the clients who come in with, shall we say, big hair, or cornrows, or dreadlocks. And there's actually a solution from people of color in the traditional medical field that's been developed. I've seen it online. They're little clamps, and you can imagine a cornrow on the scalp, and this little clamp basically clamps. And the bottom of it is silver chloride, and you put you squirt some gel at the spot that you want to contact, and you just clamp this sucker on there.
Beautiful.
And
this.
If you're lucky, you got a cornrow along every line of electrodes. But if you're not lucky, you got to be a little creative. Still, there are solutions being provided, and they're coming up through traditional as well as our less than fully traditional EEG approach. I mean, we don't, just do, photic and hyperventilation and eyes closed and open the eyes to see if they react, and that's the study. So. Our approach is a bit different and for a different purpose, but we're harnessed with some of the same physical challenges, and there are solutions that are being offered at this point. If you look around online, you'll find these. Again, it looks they're kind of like well, you've got big hair. You probably have put it back, and you've got one of those big clamps.
Actually, I mean, for anybody who's interested, essentially, you don't work against the hair. You use the hair. Okay. Yeah. Now, my hair does not have the spring. So frequently, if you don't correctly, literally maneuver the electrode in, and then you use the hair you use the spring in reverse to keep the electrode in place. Okay, but otherwise, if you place the electrode in the way that you would with a traditional white person with very thin, not necessarily thick hair, I mean, it's just so easy. Scrub, plop, done. Okay, nice. But here you kind of you weave in and you really build a home for the electrode within the hair, and then it stays. Okay.
Yeah. Now, I knew the Electrocap International would end up being kind of boofed out.
No way.
And, so
we shunt a little bit in there is a method, but I'm so happy to hear that that there are going to be official, easier ways to serve a huge population that deserves it, to say the least.
Yeah. Thank you, Jay. I'm gonna go search that out and find those. I think that's great, because I've had a few clients with cornrows and weaves, and there's some challenge there.
There's a traditional EEG tech listserv on Facebook that ends up, EEG and neurotech folks, and it popped up on there, and I thought, that looks interesting. I drilled down into it and saw kind of what they were using, and again, it's clever because you clamp to get to the bottom of it, and you've got gel underneath it. All you have to have is a salt bridge. So it ends up being a very nice solution.
Nice.
And it's a problem for our field. Yeah. And I think there's solutions on the way.
John,
when I started, we used needles.
Yeah. Well, I remember a poor gentleman that I absolutely tortured once. I felt so guilty, but had lost his hair centuries ago, it seems. So the skin on the scalp was just so tough, and we just couldn't get a connection. So the blunt needling just to, oh, poor soul. But the industry has faced these issues because of our variation, right? So
So Julian Isaacs, who I don't know if all of you remember Julian, but Julian has all of the hair that you never had. He has none. I mean, there's absolutely no hair on his head. He has hair in his ears and in his nostrils, but there's nothing on the top of his head. Barry Sturman did a prep on him one time with the electrocap, and if you don't, the reason that there isn't any hair is sebum, the waxy, oily substance, and that shine on the head is insulation. If you put gel on top of it and scratch through it, you get good impedance, but you lift your needle tip, the mono layer of the insulation forms, and your gel is floating up on top of this greasy layer. So you can't get good contact except when you're touching the skin. So if you don't wipe down, you can tell there's going to be a strip of electrodes down the middle and in lines, and go across a couple lines, kind of scrub off what you can of the sebum, and at that point do your prep. Well,
the Brillo pad out.
Poor Barry didn't do that, and poor Julian, the next day you could tell from little tiny scabs where every single one of the electrodes were. And in a hospital setting, you'd be written up for that, because those are all fungal infection points potentially. And people can have really severe, nasty side effects from having their scalp shredded like that. So and
to the point of the bald-headed people, of which I'm rapidly approaching full bald-headedness, the heat transfer, the hair dissipates some of the heat coming off the head. With somebody who's bald, after 10 minutes, you're finding the sensors are slipping down the side of their head. Probably somewhat sebum, certainly, but some of it just heat. It's melted. Yeah. It's melted the paste. So you have to reapply it again.
Hey, John, I want to get in here before I forget, because we're doing things the opposite here. This is the first time you've been on the show.
Right.
And you have a very interesting story about the reason why you got into neurofeedback. I'd love for you to touch on it, and maybe also include Susan Othmer and the training that you got, her recent passing and whatnot. We'd love to hear about it.
Sure. No, I'd be happy to. It was occurring to me, as most things happen in the shower this morning. That's where all my best thinking is done. That I've been an advocate of integrative practices for longer than I'd imagined, and this is the story, was a pursuit for finding some solutions for my daughter. My daughter's on the spectrum, and was a late diagnosis. We always knew, she didn't hit her milestones appropriately, but she always kind of hit them until school. And now in school, first, second grade, things really started just to collapse for her. Not at school. They never got an outburst. They never had a problem. All the behavior stuff happened at home. And we would go to IEPs and tell these stories about how she acted, and they were like, what? So my daughter would have all these outrageous behaviors at home, and we couldn't quite figure it out. So we had a bunch of diagnoses about this, that, and the third thing. And we finally, the final diagnosis that was, I think, the most appropriate was PDDNOS, pervasive developmental delay not otherwise specified. And we're like, yeah, that's a match. It's pervasive. It's a developmental delay, and you don't know what it's from. Okay, good. I can work with that. So in our search for finding some solutions for her, of course, we did absolutely everything. And that's why I'm always hesitant to say, oh, neurofeedback fixed her. No, it didn't. Neurofeedback was one of the tools that I think gave her brain the platform to be able to understand the learning that was happening in the other therapies that she was doing, OT, PT, fast forward, yada, 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 speech and language. So she did all of those things all at once. This isn't a science experiment. This is my own kid. And I would relate it to anybody who's thinking about doing neurofeedback in addition to other things they're doing. It's the same thing. There's no single fix to all of this. It all is kind of the point. It's holistic. It is everything. Do it all. Change your diet as best you can. My daughter never successfully changed her diet adequately. It's still a struggle for her today. But the neurofeedback component of the therapies that we were doing, I would have to ascribe had the most potency, not because inherently it's better than any of the others, but it's foundational. To when you would go to an occupational therapist and are asked to do a sequence of events, if your brain can't figure out how to successfully parse those out, A, B, C, D, this is what I do first, second, third, well, that occupational therapy is not going to be 100% successful. It's going to take much too much energy and repetition for the therapist to get the client, my daughter, to perform adequately. Same is true in any of the other therapies. So I do ascribe a fundamental quality to the neurofeedback training on propelling her forward. I also say we fell into psychopharmacology because that's what was recommended by the developmental pediatrician. So she was on 6 different drugs, Lamictal and Risperdal, and you just get down the list. We tried them all. And yeah, did they work? Yeah, they worked as designed. They dulled her symptomatology to the point where she was robotic. The real crucial moment for us, and I have to take a breath whenever I tell this story, was we were sitting at a holiday event, and there's my daughter, serendipitously placed squarely in the center of all the children. And they're all singing their little song about the Christmas tree or the whatever. And my daughter is just blankly looking around, not participating at all. Probably, I don't know what was going on internally, but probably like, where am I? What's this about? What am I doing? Looking for cues from others as to how she should behave. And I'm just, I'm looking at my wife going, I don't care what we have to do. This is pre-everything. I don't care what we have to do. This is not it. This cannot be her future. If this medical management of behavior results in this, I'd rather the other stuff. You bring it on. The wild behaviors, running across the street, not looking, just overloaded sensory systems that she would explode. I'll take that over this. So that started our journey to find things to do for her. We were already doing some of the therapies and they just weren't working. It's no surprise. She was doped up. And the neurofeedback slipped in underneath and brought her brain performance to a level where we got her off all her meds. She hadn't been on a med in 15 years. Does she still have autism? I don't know. Who cares? She's functional. She has an apartment. She has a dog. She has a job. She has friends. If for all intents and purposes, I think you'd be hard pressed in a few minutes to think that there was anything of note with her. You drill down a little bit and you realize she has still some challenges, of course, don't we all? So that journey with neurofeedback, and we did a couple of different kinds. We worked with an ILF provider whose name is escaping me at the moment. That was one of our early ones. We worked with Joy Lunt doing traditional QEEG based training. And we were like, okay, this is kind of magical. I don't know what's going on here. I didn't know enough about neurofeedback to swing a cat, but it was sort of like, whatever's going on here, something's going on, because we could see the changes in her. And all of this, again, was happening all at the same time, getting her off her meds, doing some neurofeedback, yada, yada. So she did, I don't know, 50, 60, 70, who knows, dozens, let's say dozens of hours. This is very specific to spectrum for anybody listening. Spectrum is, I think, a separate issue from a lot of the conditions, quote unquote, that present to us in clinics because it is so broadly based. And I said, okay, I got to figure out how to do this. It came from a relatively selfish perspective. I cannot afford to do neurofeedback at the level that she needs. Financially, I'd have to take a second mortgage. I'd have to get another job. Because I could see that there were hundreds of hours probably ahead of us to get where I wanted her to go. And assuming that she wanted to go to the same place, but she was a kid, so I didn't ask her. We discovered the Othmers, and the Othmers at that moment, it's not true today anymore, were allowing parents like myself to come in and do trainings and buy equipment. And I grabbed the opportunity and said to my wife, I'm going to go learn how to do this. I think it's really interesting, and I'll just do it for my daughter at home. That was my goal. I'll get this equipment, I'll get the training, I'll figure out how to do it. QEG was an unknown landscape for me. I didn't know enough about it. And now in retrospect, it was a wise choice. I could not have done what I think QEG analytics and protocol planning requires. It's very serious. The ILF machinery is so perfectly designed for somebody like me that the placements are relatively simple in that regard, because it comes from a different paradigm. I don't want to go too deep into the differences between QEG and ILF, but for anybody listening, they come from completely different spaces with the same goal in mind, self-regulation. But it was easy enough to use that I could figure out how to apply this correctly. So the Othmers very gratefully allowed me into their community, even though I didn't have a master's in a medical field. I wasn't a psychotherapist. I wasn't a doctor. And I've taken, I've lost track of how many content courses I've taken with them over the years, but I say out loud, Sue and Siegfried have allowed me the space to do what I do. They've allowed me into a community that I value, and that I think this community writ large is doing some of the best work to raise human condition, start with brain, to raise the competency of humans. This is really the most direct access that anybody's going to have to how they operate this. And I'm beyond grateful to the Othmers.
John, thank goodness that for 30 days a year, people pay attention to mental health awareness, and we are in that 30 days right now. Now, if you don't have degrees, you have degrees. There's certain things that you can say and can't say. I get it. But you having a daughter that was on the spectrum, somebody's going to say, what can neurofeedback do for autism? And if I put a clip out there and ask you, John, what can neurofeedback do for autism? What would you say?
Pete, can I just jump in?
Please.
And I'm going to apologize and not apologize. Okay. I think this is extremely important in our field and our Achilles heel. So first of all, I want to say, John, bless you. Absolutely bless you in the journey you've been on. And I know parents do some beautiful things from hearts, from desperation, what have you. And I think you're one of the success stories, and you're also, I'm projecting, of a generation where things were a little bit different. But I would say for every story like John and his daughter, there are probably 1,000 absolute disasters of individuals who, essentially go and work on their own children. And we have seen such train wrecks, ruination of children. I would say you're also, I'm going to project in terms of your daughter's age, this was a time within our practice where the community was very small. And when individuals without certain degrees, etc., were welcomed in, you were followed, you were, I hate to say disciples, but it was a very different era. And I think we're really remiss not to mention that, because if an individual goes out, takes a workshop, buys a piece of equipment, and works on a child with some, severe issues or even not severe issues, but please be cautious. And I even go as severe in 2023, do not treat your own child. There's so many people out there, but I don't want that to take away from your story.
No, Mari, I absolutely appreciate what you're saying. And by the way, I agree. Anybody listening, don't take my experience and just translate it directly to yourself. Maybe it's just my particular brain spell. I approach this with, I think, the appropriate amount of caution. Yeah. I'm not a cowboy. There's a whole bunch of techniques that I don't.
John, use. I'm not asking you to defend your decision.
No, I understand. I appreciate.
Era.
No, I appreciate that, And you're correct. But there are biohackers out there on this planet right now buying equipment, attaching 9-volt batteries to it, and driving brain behavior. I think that's kind of crazy. I really do. It's your brain. To do experimentation on your own brain, okay, putting aside your child, but to do experimentation on your own brain is perilous. If you don't know really what you're doing. I have literally spent hundreds and hundreds of hours really delving into the framework around this work, because I am mindful that I do not have a neuroscience degree. I've taken neuroanatomy courses because I need to know about neuroanatomy, not because I'm going to be a neuroanatomist. But I think it informs a lot of the things that I do. So I think your comment is cautionarily appropriate. Yeah, this isn't.
You started with the supervision of an actual clinician. I mean, Joy Lunt's RN and extremely well experienced in the field. She's a foundational member of the organizations at this point.
Exactly.
In my approach with intractable epilepsy, because we expect 100 or more sessions in intractable epilepsy. I mean, the medication has been shown not to work. They're proposing brain surgery. And if you don't want to have your brain snipped up, this is your last chance. And, it's going to take over 100 sessions. After 20 or so sessions in an office, your protocol is kind of set properly. And the parents have learned kind of where the electrode sites that you're intending to hook up are. And they've seen the operation of the equipment. If the parent is sharp enough, and you can end up having them do training sessions at home.
That's a remote model.
Right now, I could you could give me control over your computer, Pete, by assigning me control of it, and I can see you and where the electrodes are, and the therapist can still be involved at a distance to make sure sessions are going okay. And if things go really well for a number of sessions, then send the data in afterwards so I can see that the sessions are still going well. If I see something change, we can set up a session where I'm monitoring it again. But, we just published this last month, Isabella, which is her actual name. She wanted her story in print because now that she's graduated with honors from Baylor University after a 4-year tennis scholarship, when she was 8, she started having brain problems. When she was 13, she was diagnosed with intractable epilepsy, and they told her they wanted to cut her brain up. But she's, they got off all the meds. She stopped having seizures based on the training. She got a full ride tennis scholarship at Baylor, graduated with honors. Now she wants to tell people about the process, and that neurofeedback can give hope to people with intractable epilepsy. But she's done over 500 sessions. Yeah. And what's the logistics of driving to your office for 500 times? I mean, goodness gracious, the gas cost itself would be prohibitive.
Exactly.
The carbon pollution would be a guilt trip, So having parents involved in the training in supervised settings in an appropriate circumstances is actually the way we think that the epilepsy application needs to go.
The NeuroNoodle podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you. MindMedia.com. Get the latest EEG and neurofeedback technology from MindMedia.com. Their semi-dry sensor cap is a wonder to see, and their EEG amplifiers have been trusted in the field for decades. Their neurofeedback and QEEG courses will get you up to speed in no time. Visit MindMedia.com now.